All right, so the purpose of this video is either to help students who were absent from class, who missed out on the discussion about graphing compound inequalities with and or. I know you may think we just took notes over it, but we're not going to so much focus today on solving the compound inequalities as we are graphing different cases for them. And we're going to learn about set notation, which is new. Or you might be tuning in because maybe something from class was confusing and you wanted to go back over it. So let's grab our spiral notebook, hit the pause button, and let's go ahead and title a new page, this title right here. Okay, so when you're ready, go ahead and hit play and we will get started on number 1. All right, so the first thing I threw on the board was -3 is less than x. And the problem with this is that it's essentially written backwards, if you will. And what happens is students end up shading it the wrong direction. And so when we have an inequality like this, I would prefer you rewrite it and put the x over on the left side. And really what this means is x is greater than -3. So when we go to graph this, we'll have a better chance here of not making a mistake over which way to shade. So we're going to use an open circle on -3 because it's greater than -3. It does not equal -3. And now we're going to shade all the numbers that are greater than -3. So when you put the x on the left side, what you essentially see is the inequality almost points the way that you shade, much like an arrow. But you can only use that trick if you put the x over on the left side. So the next thing that we talked about in class was what was called interval notation. I did review this in the last video that you took over compound inequalities. And so your interval notation is going to go from parenthesis -3, and it shades forever to the right, so we'll say to infinity. The reason for this parenthesis is because of the open circle, and the infinity always uses a parenthesis. There's one more notation that we talked about in class, and that is set notation. And so what set notation does is you use this symbol. You've probably seen it before. It looks like a brace. And we're going to say that x is the variable in the solution set, and we make a line to almost divide the variable from the solution. And what we're going to do is we are going to take this inequality right here, and we're going to basically transfer the inequality. X is greater than -3, and we'll just close the grouping symbol right there. And so all this set notation really is interval notation is one way to do it, but set notation is another way to say that all the values of x greater than -3 are in the solution set. We'll work on that a couple more times, and I think you'll get the hang of it. So what if we graph something like x, -3 is less than or equal to x, which is less than 5. So this is really two inequalities right here. We'll talk about that in just a second. But what I recommend when you see these is let's go straight into the shading. We've got -3 with a closed circle because it can equal -3, but x is less than 5, so it's an open circle. So it all depends on this extra line right under here to tell you if it's going to be an open circle or a closed circle. And typically what students do is they see x between -3 and 5, which you are correct. You are literally going to shade in between these. What you're really saying when you see this inequality is this is really an and inequality. Okay, what we have is x is greater than or equal to -3, and we have x is less than 5. So you have to think about this as two separate inequalities. We've got the one that's right here on the left, but then we have another inequality right here on the right with the word and in between. And so if we think about this as being greater than or equal to -3 and x is less than 5, the overlap is how you shade the ands, and so we're going to shade right in here between. So that's the green is more like why we shade that way. However, the blue shading is what most students do, and they just shade between the two numbers. Let's go back to our interval notation. The interval notation is going to be bracket -3. The bracket is because of the closed circle, and we're going to end our solution at 5, and we're going to use a parenthesis because of the open circle. If I was doing set notation, I would start with a brace. X is the variable in my solution set, and then pretty much what I'm doing is I'm just copying down the inequality that was given to us. So set notation's not really a big deal. It's basically taking an inequality and putting some fancy symbols around it. All right, what about something like this? X is less than or equal to -2, or X is greater than 6. So let's go ahead and we'll go straight to our number line. So or is the second type of compound inequality that you could see. I have a closed circle on -2, open circle on 6. And again, because X is on the correct side, which I consider the left side, our inequalities basically point in the direction that we're going to shade. So we're going to shade X is less than or equal to -2, or I'm going to shade X is greater than 6. And so when you see the ors right here, you shade the combined sections of both of the inequalities. And so we have our solution going in two separate directions. Our interval notation is going to shade, we have to remember this goes forever to the left. So from -infinity to -2, and that takes a break, and then from 6 to infinity. So how's this going to look like? It's going to go parenthesis -infinity to -2 with a bracket. And then because we have another section, we put a u in between, and this is going to go from parenthesis 6 to infinity. Okay? If I was going to do set notation, I would make my brace with an X and I put my line. And then I basically just copy down that inequality, X is less than or equal to -2 or X is greater than 6. So I'm really and truly, the set notation is pretty much just the inequality that was given to you, but with some fancy symbols. All right, so this was pretty routine. This is what most students knew coming into class. Now I'm going to change it up just a little bit, okay, and really test and see if you understand the difference between and or. And so I had students draw all this out on the whiteboards, and to tell you the truth, there was a lot of incorrect boards and a lot of different answers. So let's kind of think about this one. Now the difference with this is that both the inequalities are pointing less than. So I'm going to grab my green pen here, and the green pen is going to be my thought process. This inequality says X is less than 3 or X is less than or equal to 5. And to know which part to shade, we have to understand how to shade the or inequalities. Your or inequalities, you shade the combined sections. Okay, I'm going to write this out. Shade the combined sections of both inequalities. Okay, so it's not just the overlap, you're actually shading both inequalities. And so both inequalities, so I'm going to shade everything less than 3, or I shade everything less than 5, which actually means I shade over that open circle. And so the combined sections of both of these is going to be everything from -infinity to 5. Okay, and so this right here is my shading. My interval notation would go from -infinity to 5 with a bracket. If I was going to do set notation, I would actually shorten up the original inequality, because we can see that our shading is reflected by this inequality, X is less than or equal to 5. Okay, so that's where it got a little bit trickier in class, which is the reason that you're watching this video, is because you have to really pay attention to whether it's an and or an or. So now what I have is X is greater than or equal to -2 and X is greater than 0. So again, what I asked students to do was to graph this, and we held up a lot of different answers, and there were a lot of incorrect answers. So let's talk about what this is going to look like. Again, I'm going to grab my green pen. The green pen is going to represent my thought process about this. And so what I see here is I see X is greater than or equal to -2 and X is greater than 0. So how does this shade, given that it's an and? Well, when you shade the and inequalities, you shade the overlap only. So we're only going to shade this part right here where both of the inequalities overlap. Okay, and they do not overlap at 0. One of the inequalities includes 0, and one of them does not. So we're going to leave an open circle right there. So our interval notation is going to go from 0 to infinity. So let's see here if we take that thinking about how to shade the and or the ors, and let's see if maybe we can have a little bit of success with these different cases right here. Okay, if you want, you could try hitting the pause button, try working it out, and then when you're ready to kind of hear how the solution works, go ahead and hit play and listen to how this goes. Or stick right here with me and we'll kind of talk this out. So again, I'm going to get my green pen and I'm going to make sure I put the numbers in order because 2 comes before 5 on the number line. And so I have right here, I have an open circle, x is greater than 5. Again, look at these arrows right here, x is greater than 5 and x is less than 2. Well, we just said that we need to shade the overlap, but there is no overlap. Okay, so what do we say? What we call that is no solution. There's no numbers that satisfy both of these inequalities. And there's a symbol for that, and what this symbol right here means is it means the empty set. Okay, it's the set that has nothing in it, and that's how we can indicate our no solution for this. All right, the last one I did in class was x greater than or equal to -2, or x is less than 0. Again, if you want to try, hit the pause key, work through it, hit play when you're ready, or let's work through this together. All right, -2 and 0. I know I've got a closed circle, I know I've got an open circle, but again, I'm going to go ahead and think through this first with inequalities above before I determine what I'm going to shade. Here's the arrow is x is greater than or equal to -2, or I have x is less than 0. And so again, with your ors, I don't just shade the overlap, it's the combined sections of both inequalities. So I'm going to shade everything less than 0, okay, or my solution can be everything greater than or equal to -2, which shades right over that inequality. So this time, if I shade this inequality and this inequality, I end up covering the entire number line. And what this looks like is -infinity to infinity if I write this using interval notation. Okay? So that was our discussion that we had in class, and I hope this helps. You are going to be working on an assignment, compound inequalities, where we're going to need to pull together the examples we did from the last set of notes and how to do more specifically the graphing from this set of notes. But anyway, hopefully you'll be successful with that. Good luck. We'll see you next time in class.